Korean mafia boss went to choose a wedding suit, then saw his black ex-wife and their twins after 10 years. Kang Min-jae stood on the fitting platform of Seoul's most exclusive tailor house, arms slightly out, jaw tight, eyes fixed on nothing in particular the way powerful men look when they are physically present, but mentally already 3 moves ahead. The shop had been closed to the public for him. Outside, 2 black SUVs sat along the curb. Inside, 4 staff members moved around him in practiced silence, pinning, measuring, adjusting the charcoal suit that would be worn at his wedding rehearsal in exactly 48 hours. The head tailor murmured, "The cut is perfect, director. Your bride will be very pleased." Min-jae said nothing, and then he saw her, not with his eyes first, with the mirror. She was walking past the shop window, unhurried, a canvas bag on one shoulder, her natural hair catching the late afternoon light. And beside her, matching her pace with the easy confidence of boys who had never once doubted they were exactly where they were supposed to be, were 2 children, 2 boys, same height, same build, same jaw, his jaw. The measuring tape snapped. The tailor flinched. Min-jae did not. He was already stepping off the platform, one sleeve pinned, one sleeve hanging, walking toward the glass the way a man walks when his body has made a decision before his mind has finished the argument. "Director Kang, the fitting is not complete." He put one hand flat against the cold glass. She had stopped at the flower stall 3 shops down. One of the boys said something and she laughed, tilting her head back the way she always did when something caught her off guard. The taller boy reached past her to touch a stem of something yellow. The shorter one leaned against her arm. Zara Mitchell, the woman he had loved, the woman he had left. The woman who had packed a single suitcase and disappeared from Seoul on a rainy October morning 10 years ago without a word, without a forwarding address, without a trace his people could ever find, no matter how quietly he had asked them to look. Except she had not disappeared. She had been here all along, and those boys. Min-jae pressed his fingers harder against the glass and did the math he had been avoiding since the moment he saw them. 10 years. Twins. The way they moved, the way they stood, the way the taller one turned his head slowly and looked directly at the window as though he had felt someone watching, looked directly at Min-jae and frowned. The way Min-jae frowned when he was trying to place a face he knew he should recognize. Min-jae's second-in-command appeared at his elbow. "Boss, the Park family lawyer is confirming the rehearsal dinner venue. They need a head count by 6. Min-jae did not answer, because Zara had looked up from the flowers, and she had seen him through the glass. And for 3 full seconds, neither of them moved. Not a step, not a breath, not a blink. Then she took both boys gently by the shoulders, turned them away from the window, and walked in the opposite direction without looking back. The shop assistant knelt quietly to retrieve 2 pins that had fallen from the unfinished sleeve. The head tailor cleared his throat. "Director Kang, shall we continue?" Min-jae watched the space where she had been standing until the flower stall blocked her completely. Then he stepped back from the glass, looked down at the half-finished suit, and said, in a voice no one in that room had ever heard from him before, quiet, stripped of everything, "Leave it. If you have ever loved someone who let you go without a fight, stay with me. Because what happens in the next 10 minutes is going to remind you exactly why some people are worth the wait and why some apologies have to be earned with years, not words." Hit subscribe and turn on the bell right now because this story moves fast and you do not want to miss the moment those boys figure out who is standing in that tailor shop window. He walked out, one sleeve pinned, one sleeve hanging. The tailor stood at the door, watching the director of Kang Holdings climb into his car without his security jacket, without his phone, without a word to the 2 bodyguards who scrambled after him. The charcoal suit stayed on the mannequin, uncollected, still waiting. Min-jae did not go back to the office. He went home. 41st floor, Han Riverview, a penthouse that had been featured in 3 architecture magazines and felt every single morning like sleeping inside a trophy no one had actually won. He walked past his housekeeper, past the framed engagement photograph his future mother-in-law had sent over last week with a note that read, "Have it displayed somewhere guests will see," past the untouched dinner on the kitchen counter. He went straight to his mother's room, which he had kept exactly as she left it when she died 2 years ago, the way people keep rooms when grief has not yet decided what to do with itself. The locked box was in the bottom drawer of her wardrobe, beneath folded silk scarves that still held the faint trace of her perfume. He had known it was there. He had simply never opened it, out of respect. Out of the quiet, irrational superstition that some boxes were sealed for good reason, and a son who loved his mother should not question her reasons. Tonight he opened it. Inside were 4 things. A notarized legal document dated October, 10 years ago. He read the first paragraph and had to set it down. He picked it up again and read it to the end without stopping. It was an agreement, formal, witnessed, stamped, between his mother, a family lawyer he recognized, and a third party simply identified as a representative of the Mitchell matter. The language was clean and corporate and said everything without saying anything directly. The foreign national had accepted terms. The foreign national had agreed to permanent relocation. The foreign national would make no further contact. The foreign national was Zara. The second item was a cash settlement receipt, a large number, transferred in 3 installments over 6 weeks. And at the bottom, a signature he had seen on documents every single working day for the past decade, Park Sung-chul, his second in command. The man who had stood at his elbow in the tailor shop 2 hours ago asking about rehearsal dinner headcounts. The third item was a photograph. Zara, at Incheon Airport. She was visibly pregnant, a single suitcase at her feet, one hand pressed flat against her stomach the way pregnant women do when they are trying to hold themselves together from the outside. She was crying, not dramatically, the quiet kind of crying that happens when a person has already finished arguing and accepted the shape of their loss. A few feet behind her, near a pillar, a man in a black suit stood watching her. Min-jae recognized the posture before he recognized the face. Sung-chul, 20 years younger but unmistakably him, watching Zara board a plane while Min-jae was somewhere over the Pacific on a business trip he had been told could not wait. The fourth item was a single handwritten note, not from his mother, from Sung-chul. 4 words, confirmed departure, no complications. Min-jae sat on the edge of his mother's bed for a very long time. The room was quiet. The city hummed 41 floors below. He looked at the photograph until he could not look at it anymore, and then he looked at it again. Zara at an airport, pregnant, alone, crying, while the 2 people he had trusted most in his life stood on either side of the arrangement that made sure she never came back. She had not disappeared. She had been removed, and he had spent 10 years building an empire large enough to forget about it. In another part of Seoul, in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Mapo with a shoe rack at the door that held 4 pairs of sneakers, 2 pairs of school shoes, and 1 pair of worn running shoes that belonged to nobody small, Zara Mitchell sat at the edge of Kai's bed after both boys had fallen asleep. She did not cry. She had learned, a long time ago, to do her crying in the morning, in the shower, where it had somewhere to go. Tonight, she simply sat and watched her sons breathe. Kai, the older one by 4 minutes, slept on his back with one arm thrown over his face, already taking up more space than the bed could reasonably offer. Kofi, the younger, slept curled on his side facing the wall, one knee drawn up, exactly the way Zara's mother said Zara herself had slept as a child. She whispered to the room, to no one, to herself, "You almost saw him today." In the other room, separated by a thin wall and the particular alertness of a 10-year-old who had grown up reading his mother's silences, Kai lay with his eyes open. He had heard her come in. He had heard the particular way she closed the door, 3 seconds slower than usual, the way she closed it when something had happened that she was processing alone. He turned his head toward the wall and said, very quietly, "Kofi." A pause. Then, "I'm awake." "That man at the window." Another pause. "I saw him." He stopped breathing when he saw Mum. Kofi was quiet for a moment. "Hyung, did you see his eyes?" Kai had seen them. He saw them every morning in the mirror. He said nothing. He turned back to face the ceiling and stayed awake for a long time. The next morning, Min-jae arrived at the Kang Holdings executive floor 37 minutes late. He had never been late in his life. The 6 executives already in the boardroom straightened when he entered. Sung-chul was at the head of the table running through quarterly logistics. He stood immediately, bowing the appropriate 15 degrees. "Hyungnim, we were concerned." Min-jae did not look at him. He walked to the long window and stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the city below the way he always did, when he wanted the room to understand that what was about to happen was not a conversation. It was a verdict. October, 10 years ago, there was a series of cash transfers from a private account managed through this office, 3 installments. "I would like you to tell me what they were for." The room temperature dropped. Sung-chul did not move. None of the other executives breathed visibly. Min-jae did not turn around. He had spent 20 years learning to read the micro-pauses of men who lied professionally, and the pause that followed his question told him everything he needed to know before a single word was spoken. "Hyungnim," Sung-chul said quietly. "That was a long time ago." "My mother is dead," Min-jae said. "You are not." A longer pause. "What would you like to know?" Min-jae turned. His face was the face that had made a sitting assemblyman hand in his resignation by the end of a single lunch. Everything. Her full itinerary from the day I left for Tokyo, who approached her, whether she was threatened, whether anyone laid a hand on her, whether she tried to contact me and what happened to those attempts. You will have this on my desk by 5 o'clock. Every detail, every name, and Sung Chul. He let the silence sit for exactly 3 seconds. Do not make me ask twice. Sung Chul bowed, 45 degrees. The bow of a man who understands that his position has just become temporary. It took Min-jae 6 days to find her. He did not use the organization's resources. He did not assign surveillance. He did not ask Sung Chul, who was currently suspended on full pay in the kind of comfortable holding pattern that powerful men use when they want someone preserved rather than punished. For now, he simply thought about who Zara had been. The woman beneath the 10 years of silence. The woman who had loved Saturday mornings and fresh flowers and the particular chaos of street markets where nobody knew her name. He went to the Saturday flower market in Mapo on foot, alone, in plain clothes, and he waited. She arrived at 9:43, without the boys this time. Canvas bag, same as before. She moved through the stalls with the ease of someone who had done this every Saturday for years, greeting one vendor by name, inspecting stems with the focused attention of a person who took small, beautiful things seriously. She saw him when she was 3 stalls away. She did not stop walking. She did not change her expression. She finished examining the flowers she was holding, handed the vendor the exact amount without needing change, tucked the stems into her bag, and then walked directly to him and stopped at a distance of exactly 2 arm lengths. You have, she said, exactly as long as it takes me to finish paying for the rest of these flowers. I found the documents. Something moved behind her eyes, not surprise, recognition, the look of a woman who always knew this day existed somewhere in the future and had simply been waiting to find out which version of him would show up for it. How much did you know? She asked. Nothing. I know how that sounds. It sounds like something a man says. I know that too. She looked at him for a long moment. The market moved around them, indifferent. A vendor called out a price. A child somewhere behind them laughed. Zara reached into her bag and paid for a bunch of small white flowers without looking away from his face. I have 2 sons, she said. They are 10 years old. They are brilliant and healthy and funny, and they have grown up knowing exactly who they are, and they have done that entirely without you. I am not telling you this to wound you. I am telling you so that you understand the position you are asking to enter from. You are not catching up on 10 years. You are starting from 0, and whether or not you get to start at all is not your decision. Min-jae said nothing. He had prepared words on the walk here. They had all left him. 2 weeks, Zara said. She reached into the side pocket of her canvas bag and produced a folded piece of paper. Typed. 4 conditions. Numbered. Clean. She had prepared this before today. She had known he would come. You have 2 weeks to show me proof of everything you claim not to have known. Not your word. Documentation. After 2 weeks, I decide if there is a phase 2. These are the conditions that apply in the meantime. He took the paper. He read it without rushing. He folded it and put it in the pocket closest to his chest. And if I break one, he asked, then you will not hear from me again. And this time, she said, with the particular quietness of a woman who has had 10 years to think about exactly this sentence, I have the resources and the knowledge to make sure that even your organization cannot find us. She picked up her bag. She looked at him one final time, not with hatred, not with warmth, simply with the clear, steady gaze of a woman who has decided to be precise. Don't follow me home. She walked away through the market and did not look back. Min-jae stood among the flowers for a long moment. Then, he unfolded the paper and read it again, slowly, in the middle of a Saturday market in Mapo, like a man reading the terms of the most important contract of his life, which was exactly what it was. Before we go any further, pause for just 1 second. If you are already feeling this, if you are already on Zara's side and you are not sure Min-jae deserves even those 2 weeks she gave him, tell me in the comments right now. Would you have given him the 2 weeks, or would you have walked away at that flower market and never looked back? I am reading every single comment tonight. And subscribe if you are not already, because what Zara finds out next about why she really disappeared from Seoul is going to change everything you think you know about this story. For the next 2 weeks, Min-jae did something he had not done since he was a boy, learning the difference between wanting something and being prepared to work for it. He was methodical, quiet, entirely without performance. He sent Zara one message every 2 days, not emotional, not pleading, factual, the way she had asked, the way she deserved. First message, Sung Chul's full written account obtained, notarized. 3 separate payments confirmed across 2 accounts. Will forward to your lawyer when you provide contact details. No pressure on timeline. Second message, located the immigration officer who processed the paperwork on your departure. He has confirmed he was paid to flag your visa for administrative review to pressure the timeline. His statement is attached. Third message, Found a fourth party. A woman in my mother's personal network who acted as the intermediary between my mother and Sung Chul. She has provided a voluntary statement. I did not threaten her. I asked her once, and she gave it to me. I think she had been waiting to be asked. Fourth message. Everything is with your lawyer. All of it. Every document, every statement, every transfer record. I have kept nothing back. You now have more evidence of what was done to you than I do. Zara read each message in the evenings after the boys were asleep. She read them sitting at the small kitchen table with a cup of tea going cold beside her. She replied each time with one word. Okay, just okay. Until the fourth week, when she read his final message and sat with it for a long time. Then she typed 2 words and pressed send before she could reconsider. Okay, I believe you. Min Jae was in his car outside a late meeting when the message arrived. He read it once, he read it again, he put the phone face down on the seat and looked out the window at the city for a full minute without moving. His driver, a man who had worked for him for 11 years and had learned to read silences the way sailors read weather, said nothing. He simply drove. In a cafe in Cheongdam, at a corner table she had reserved under a different name, Park Ji-won sat across from her father and listened to him explain, in his careful, unhurried way, exactly what he intended to do. Chairman Park In-soo was 61 years old. He wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly salaries and had a voice that never rose above a conversational register, regardless of what he was saying. He had built the Park conglomerate from a mid-size manufacturing firm into a holding company with interests in shipping, telecommunications, and 3 major hotel chains. He had done this by being, above all things, patient. He slid a folder across the table. A journalist has been asking questions, he said. I have given him enough to begin. Not names, details. A black woman, 2 mixed children, a tailor shop in Gangnam. He is resourceful. He will have the rest by Thursday. Ji-won opened the folder. She looked at the photograph inside, a grainy image taken through a shop window. Zara standing at the flower stall, the boys beside her. She closed the folder. And what is the intended outcome? She asked. Min Jae chooses, publicly. Either he proceeds with the engagement, and the foreign woman and her children become a footnote, or he does not, and a man who abandoned his wedding preparations for a past relationship becomes a liability his business partners will quietly step away from. Either way, the Park family is not humiliated. Ji-won looked at her father for a long moment. You want him to choose in front of everyone so that if he chooses her, you can dismantle him. And if he chooses the engagement, she carries the cost alone. I want, her father said pleasantly, an outcome that protects this family. Ji-won nodded once. She picked up her coffee. She said nothing else for the remainder of the meeting. That night, she drove herself to Mapo. She had found Zara's general neighborhood through the same information her father's journalist had assembled, but she had located the specific coffee shop through simpler means. She had simply looked for the kind of place a woman like Zara would choose. Small, bright, 40 seats, close to a school. She had been right on the first try. Zara was there with a book and a half-finished cup of something warm when Ji-won walked in, looked around once, and walked directly to her table the way people walk when they have made a decision and are not interested in reconsidering it on the way. Zara recognized her immediately. The business press had run Ji-won's photograph twice in the past year, in the context of the Park conglomerate's expansion strategy. She did not stand. She did not smile. She simply looked at the empty chair across from her. Ji-won sat. I have 15 minutes. My driver thinks I am at a client meeting. Say what you came to say, Zara said. My father has given a journalist enough information to find you by Thursday. He will not print your name immediately. He will print enough detail that you will be findable by anyone who looks. After that, your son's school, your address, your workplace, all of it becomes available to anyone with a reason to look. Ji-won's voice was level, not cruel. Simply precise, the way a person speaks when they are delivering information rather than performing it. I came to tell you because you have time to move if you choose to. And because your children should not be the cost of a business disagreement between men. Zara's hands wrapped around her cup. Why are you telling me this? He is your father. Ji-won was quiet for a moment. She looked at the table and then back up. I have a younger sister. 8 years ago, she loved someone who chose his family's arrangement over her. She did not come out of that quickly. She is fine now. She is good now. But I watched what it cost her, and I watched the people who made that choice walk away from it without carrying any of it. A pause. I will not be the instrument of that for someone else. Particularly not for someone else's children. Zara looked at her for a long moment. The coffee shop moved around them quietly. Someone at the counter laughed at something. Outside, a bus went past. What are you going to do about your father? Zara asked. That is my problem, Ji-won said. Not yours. She stood, she straightened her jacket, she paused, and then added in a tone that was almost, not quite, gentle. Tell Min-jae the engagement is finished. Tell him I will handle my father in my own way and in my own time. Tell him I expect nothing from him except that he takes care of his family. That is the only version of this story that ends cleanly for everyone. She left without looking back. Zara sat for 10 minutes. She looked at her book without reading it. Then she picked up her phone and called Min-jae for the first time. He answered on the second ring. She said, Phase 2. Tomorrow. Yeouido Park. 9 in the morning. Come alone. He said, I will be there. She hung up. He was there at 8:45, sitting on a bench near the river path in plain clothes, no security, no phone calls, nothing in his hands except 2 paper cups of honeyed barley tea he had bought from a street vendor on the way in. He remembered after 10 years that she drank it every morning. He did not know if she still did. He brought it anyway. She arrived at 9 exactly. She saw the cups. She said nothing about them. She sat down and accepted one, and that was the whole of it. Jiwon came to see me, Zara said. I know. She sent me a message this morning. What did she say to you? That the engagement is off, that she is handling her father, that I should focus on my family. He paused. She used that word, family, not the situation, not the matter. Family. Zara looked at the river. She is a good woman. She is. A silence settled between them, not uncomfortable. The particular silence of 2 people who have run out of the things that needed to be said first and have arrived at the things that are harder. Zara spoke without turning her head. I want to tell you something and I need you to just listen, not respond, not explain, just listen. All right. I was 26 years old. I had been in Seoul for 2 years. I had built a life here, a real one, friends, work I was proud of, a language I had taught myself from nothing. And I loved you in the way you love someone when you are young enough to believe that love is sufficient. That if something is real enough, it protects itself. She paused. I found out I was pregnant 3 days before you left for Tokyo. I was terrified, and I was happy, and I wanted to tell you in person, not over a call, not in a message, so I waited. And while I was waiting, your mother's lawyer came to my apartment. Min-jae was very still. He was polite, Zara continued. That was the thing I always remembered. He was so polite. He sat in my kitchen and explained, very calmly, that a long-term relationship between me and you was not something the family could support, that there was a settlement that would allow me to leave comfortably, that the alternative was a visa review process that could take up to a year and that I would likely not survive professionally. She stopped. I was pregnant. I was alone. I did not know at the time that what he was doing was something you had not sanctioned. I thought you had sent him. I thought this was your answer to the conversation we had not yet had. She turned and looked at him directly. Her eyes were dry. She had cried about this a long time ago and she had finished. I need you to understand what I took from that apartment, not just the suitcase. I took the belief that the man I loved had weighed me and found me insufficient. I raised 2 children inside that belief. Every time they asked about their father and I had to find words that were honest but not poisonous, I was doing it inside that belief. So when I tell you that trust between us, if it ever exists again, cannot be rushed, I need you to understand the full weight of what I am asking you to be patient with. Min-jae did not speak for a long moment. When he did, his voice was quiet and entirely without defense. I understand. And I will not insult what you just said by trying to match it with an explanation. There is no explanation that is the right size for what you carried. He looked at the river. I will be here, for as long as it takes, at whatever distance you need. I am not asking you for anything today except permission to show up. Zara looked at him for a long time. Then she said, The boys know you exist. I have not told them who you are. But they are 10 years old and they are not unobservant, and I think you should know that Kai has already figured it out. What did he say? He said, Mom, that man at the window had your sad face, the one you get when you are thinking about something from before us. She paused. He is very perceptive. He gets that from me. Min-jae looked at her. Something shifted in his face, careful and unguarded at the same time. Can I meet them? Not today, but soon. On my terms, at my pace, in my space. And Min-jae. She stood and picked up the empty cup. You bring the tea again next time. That was a good decision. She walked away along the river path and he watched her go and he did not follow. Jiwon walked into her father's study that same evening, carrying a folder of her own. She set it on his desk without preamble. Chairman Park looked at it without opening it. What is this? Every Cha Holdings transaction I personally signed off on as Chief Strategy Officer over the past 3 years. Every offshore account. Every political favor. Every shell company. Jiwon sat in the chair across from him, the one reserved for people her father was about to negotiate with. If anything happens to those boys, anything at all, including a sudden scholarship offer, a visa complication, a journalist with suddenly more specific information. I will send this folder to the National Tax Service. I have already prepared the submission. I have already given a copy to a lawyer in Singapore who is instructed to send it automatically if I do not make contact every 24 hours. Her father looked at her for a long time. His expression did not change. You would do this to your own family. I would protect it, Ji-won said, from decisions that will follow us. Because if I allow you to do this to those children, then I have agreed that this is the kind of family we are. And I will not raise my own children in that agreement. Chairman Park did not speak for a very long time. Then he closed the folder and pushed it back across the desk toward her. The journalist, he said, will be redirected. He did not apologize. Ji-won did not expect him to. She picked up the folder and left. She sent Min-jae a single message that night. Handled. He will not move against them. Take care of your family. That is all I will ever ask of you. Min-jae read it 3 times. Then he forwarded it to Zara with one line. It is safe. And someday, when the time is right, please tell Ji-won thank you from me. Zara read it alone in her kitchen after the boys had gone to bed. She set the phone down. She looked at the small window above the sink where the city lights came through at night and made the room look warmer than it was. And for the first time in 10 years, she let herself sit in a kitchen that felt, quietly, like it might not always have to hold everything alone. 5 months passed. The press found nothing. The stock recovered. Song-chul was removed from every position inside Kang Holdings following the conclusion of a thorough internal investigation and relocated to a quiet position in a coastal office where his communications were monitored and his influence ended permanently. He was not harmed. He was simply, comprehensively, finished as a player. Min-jae became a different kind of man in those 5 months, not a different boss. He was still the man who made rivals reconsider their positions with a single phone call. He still ran the empire with the particular coldness that had built it. But on Tuesday afternoons, he sat in the back row of a community center gymnasium and watched Kofi's swimming trials, always in the last seat, never the first, because he was not yet someone these boys should have to perform in front of. And on Thursday evenings, he stood outside a school debate hall and listened through the door to Kai dismantle an opposing argument with a precision that made something in Min-jae's chest feel like grief and pride at the same time. He never went in. Zara had not said he could go in yet, so he stood outside and listened and went home. He asked for nothing, not a title, not a conversation beyond what she offered, not a sign that anything was building. He simply showed up, on time, every time, and let the consistency be the only argument he was making. One evening, Zara opened her apartment door before he knocked. She had heard him on the stairs, his particular unhurried step, and she had stood at the door for a moment before opening it. The boys want to know if you can stay for dinner, she said. He looked at her. Can I? They asked. Not me. But she stepped back from the door. He came in. Kofi immediately told him there was a football match on after dinner, and he would be required to have an opinion. Kai set a 4th place at the table without being asked, with the quiet efficiency of someone who had already decided something and was simply enacting it. Dinner was jollof rice, which Zara had learned to make from her mother and had taught the boys to love, and fried plantain, and a Korean spinach side dish that Kofi had apparently requested specifically. It was the best meal Min-jae had eaten in 10 years, and it cost nothing and took up no space in any restaurant guide anywhere in the world. After dinner, during the match, Kofi fell asleep against Min-jae's arm on the sofa, with the abrupt totality that children fall asleep, completely and without warning. Min-jae did not move. He sat very still and watched the rest of the match and did not move the boy's head. Kai, from the armchair across the room, watched this. Then he looked at his mother in the kitchen doorway. Zara looked back at her son. Something passed between them, a conversation that needed no words because they had always been able to do that, and then Kai turned back to the television. Later, when Kofi had been carried to bed and the apartment was quiet, Zara stood at the kitchen counter and Min-jae stood near the door in the way of a guest who knows it is time to leave but has not been dismissed yet. He asked me again, Zara said. Kofi, he asked me if you were his father. Min-jae waited. I told him yes. The word landed in the room and stayed there. What did he say? Min-jae asked. He said okay. And then he asked if you were good at football. She paused. I told him I had no idea. He said he would find out himself. Min-jae looked at the door. His jaw was tight in the way it got when he was holding something carefully. And Kai? Kai already knew. He is known for weeks. He is waiting to decide what to do with it on his own timeline. She looked at him. He is very much like you in that way. A silence. Then Zara said, the boy's birthday is in 3 weeks. They will be 11. I want you there. Not as a guest. Not as an old friend. As their father, officially, in front of the small number of people I trust in this world. My sister, who was flying in from London. My friend Yemi, who kept us alive in the early years. Mrs. Choi from downstairs, who taught the boys Korean when I was working nights. She paused. That is the whole list. No empire, no statement, no occasion made of it. Just a dinner table and a small cake, and you sitting at the head of it because that is where you should have been for 10 years. If you can do that, simply, without making it about anything other than them, then we move forward. And someday, when I have decided I am ready, when the boys are older and steadier and the ground between us is something I can trust my weight on, we will talk about what comes after that. But not before. Are those terms acceptable? Min-jae looked at her for a long moment. The man who negotiated across tables that moved billions. The man whose silence made ministers nervous. The man who had spent 10 years building a skyline he could see from every window of his penthouse and had never once felt at home in. He said, yes, those terms are acceptable. She nodded, and then, slowly, she reached across the small distance between them and rested her hand against the side of his face, not as a lover, not as a wife. As a woman who had made a decision, on her own terms, in her own time, that this man, this specific man who had stood outside a debate hall in the cold so as not to make it about himself, who had sat motionless for 40 minutes so as not to wake a sleeping child, who had accepted every condition without negotiating a single one, was worth letting back through the door. He closed his eyes. He did not move. He let her hand stay there for as long as she chose to leave it. When she finally took it away, he opened his eyes and looked at the apartment, the shoe rack at the door, the school trophies on the shelf. The photograph of the boys at age 3, in front of what looked like a Lagos beach, gap-toothed and delighted. Home, 3 rooms, not a skyline, not an empire. Home, the birthday came, the cake was small, the candles were 11. The boys blew them out together the way they had every year, loudly and competitively, both claiming the other had cheated. There was one more person at the table this year, sitting, as promised, at the head, quietly, without ceremony. Kai made a toast. He stood up with his juice glass and looked around the table with the particular seriousness of a boy who takes words seriously. He said, to his mother, everything. That was the whole of what he said to her, just that one word with the weight of 11 years in it. Then he turned to Min-jae. He paused for a long moment, the way his father paused in boardrooms, and the room felt it. Then he said, choosing the word carefully, in his own time, on his own terms, Appa, who is here now. Kofi clinked his glass against everyone's within reach and said, also he is not good at football. I have assessed this. The table laughed. Yemi wiped her eyes. Mrs. Choi pretended she was not crying by looking very hard at the ceiling. Zara's sister put her arm around Zara and said nothing because she did not need to. Min-jae raised his cup. His hands were steady, not because he was not moved. Because he had learned, in these months of standing outside halls and sitting still on sofas and following every rule he had been given, the difference between a man who holds himself together for appearances and a man who holds himself together because the people across the table deserve his steadiness. A boy drops the ring. A man holds the cup because he finally understands what is in it. The suit was still at the tailor shop, uncollected. The mannequin wore it in the window of a closed shop on a quiet street in Gangnam, charcoal gray, one sleeve still pinned, one sleeve still hanging, dressed for a life that had been left on a platform. And in a small, warm apartment in Mapo, with a shoe rack that now held 5 pairs of sneakers and the sound of 2 boys arguing about football in the next room, Kang Min-jae washed dishes beside a woman who had decided, on her own terms, that some doors were worth reopening. He was not the boss here. He was not the director. He was not the man the city was built around. He was, simply and entirely, the man who had finally come home. And that, for the first time in 10 years, was enough. If this story moved something in you, if you have ever had to rebuild trust from zero, if you have ever been the person who left, or the person who was left, tell me in the comments which character you saw yourself in most. Was it Zara, who carried everything alone and still chose grace? Was it Min-jae, who had to learn the difference between power and presence? Or was it those boys, who had to grow up holding a question with no answer? Leave it below. I read every single one, and if you are not subscribed yet, do it now. Because the next story coming to this channel is already written, and it will break you in the best possible way.